very much. Look, I'm amazed at the alarmism and the extremism and the scaremongering that's been heard in the House today. This is a simple bill to improve transparency, accountability and financial management. It's a bill on behalf of the ratepayers, the length and breadth of this country. The provisions of the bill are intended to operate at two levels. First, at a strategic level. The bill aims to change the way that local authorities set their direction and the way this can be influenced and assessed by the community. So already it's directed at the communities having more knowledge of what is going on. And how is this aimed to be achieved? Well, it reinforces the need for local authorities to focus on core services. And we've heard already that this is approved of by the Wellington City Council. It's a guideline, it's not being didactic, so effectively local councils can focus on core services and they'll learn what those core services are from their community. We talk about introducing, and a bill introduces a pre-election report. And why is this? It's to encourage and inform election debate, so people elect their officials representing them on the basis of informed information and well-known aspects of what each person stands for and how they've performed and what the council has performed like in the preceding 3 years. We introduced a financial strategy to the long-term plan to help local authorities and their communities debate and resolve the key financial and service delivery trade-offs that local authorities must make. We integrate community outcomes and long-term planning processes to encourage better prioritisation of community aspirations. Once again, it's all to do with what the community wants. We focus community outcomes on the role that a local authority intends to play in its district or in its region. And of course, we improve the financial and non-financial information and long-term plans by making it more accessible, more useful and comprehensible to most of us. Most of us don't have an accounting degree. We want to make it easy to understand. At an operational level, the bill aims to simplify decision-making processes. And why do we want to do this? Because we heard from many councils they were required at so many steps to consult, they were getting consultation fatigue. So we're removing unnecessary auditing by taking a number of the operational policies out of the long-term plan. We're removing unnecessary consultation, as we said, and we're levelling the playing field to better enable the private sector to deliver local authority service where that is required by the local authority. Now, we've had a few concerns from people about the consultation. Let's address some of these things. The Act contains many provisions to ensure and enable community engagement and consultation in local authority decision-making. The bill proposes amendments to remove some of the more prescriptive ones, and we have heard from the other side of the House that that has had a certain amount of acceptance from the opposition, and I'm pleased to hear that. Yes. So we do propose to remove some of the more prescriptive consultation requirements, but we acknowledge and we do clearly underline the fact that there is still consultation required. And where is this consultation required? Section 78 of the Act requires a local authority to give consideration to the views of interested or affected parties when making a decision. That's right. Section 97 requires that any decision which would significantly alter the level of service provided for a significant activity or transfer ownership or control of a strategic asset be included in the long-term plan, which itself requires and involves community consultation. So we can put that concern to one side. Now, core services is another one that we have a lot of debate about. Clause 5 introduced the list of core services, and it says that communities must have a particular regard to the contribution of these services to their communities. Many submitters asked that the list is unduly rigid or restrictive and pointed out that what is considered core in one area is not core in another. We understand that. We understand that. This clause does not, on the other, prevent a local authority from providing services not listed if it deems them a priority for their local community. It preserves the ability of the local authority to decide which services to provide for the community. Right. It may be seen as providing a reference point and a focus for community debate. So, Mr Speaker, I would like to commend this bill to the House. Thank you very much.
David.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this bill is really an piece of ideology that the National Government has decided to go along with. I don't even know if the National Government really understands, really has contemplated what is in this bill and how it will actually play out in the years to come. We've known Rodney Hyde for many, many years has talked about the need to reform local government so that corporate interests, private interests, have a much bigger say. This is what this piece of legislation does, and the National Government is going along with it, probably because of some agreement for supply that the ACT Party is needed by the National Government in order to progress its other agendas through. It's gone through, secondly, under urgency. Almost every piece of Rodney Hyde's legislation that he's brought to this House has gone through urgency. We sat here until midnight last night in the second reading. We've been speaking about this all day today. It's the same as the Auckland bills. 2 out of the 3 Auckland bills also went through urgency. The first one, famously, we sat right through almost the weekend to oppose. Many of the colleagues across the side of the House have said, well, look, this is really about listening to the people out there. This is really about giving ratepayers a better say. In fact, that's one of the intentions of this bill. But when you look at it, Mr Speaker, there were 414 submissions to the Select Committee, and I was able to listen to, in one of the occasions in Auckland, many of the Auckland councils came and I was there when they came and presented their evidence. 360 were against it. Of those, 36 of those were councils. This is not simply what your mum and dad's coming and sitting and talking to the Select Committee, although those people are also welcome. They are councils that have been elected by ratepayers saying that this piece of legislation is a backward step. On the water privatisation part of this legislation, Mr Speaker, 414 submissions, 360 against it. 360 were against it, 17 in favour. You can do the maths. About 5% spoke in favour. The overwhelming number, Mr Speaker, spoke out against it. This is not wanted by New Zealand. It is not wanted by the councils that represent the local people around New Zealand. And in the local body elections, Mr Speaker, they spoke out and said, actually, we don't want this. And in Auckland, they voted overwhelmingly for a mayor and councillors who would be in opposition to this sort of legislation. We are lucky that we have them. We are lucky that those people are there to stand up to what amounts to a piece of ideological claptrap that this government is bringing into this House. It's not only ideological, but a lot of it's actually unnecessary. And Cam Calder talked about the pre-election report that this piece of legislation wants to have. We had varying degrees of submissions on this, overwhelmingly against. Some of them said, yes, we can go along with it. But what did they say really? Well, most of the big councils said, look, we can do this. We're already doing it in a number of other ways that we report back to people, a number of other ways that we make ourselves accountable, but we can do this. The smaller councils said, we can do this, but actually it's going to cost because we're going to have to employ more people to be able to write this pre-election report. So in fact, it's actually going to increase the administration